Awesome. Let's do it. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the third edition for Catalyze. Can't believe it's already the third one. Before we get started, we have an ask for you all. We would love for today's session to be as interactive as possible, so feel free to use the chat. And I don't know if Happen can do any reactions like Zoom can, but please don't hesitate to ask any questions, drop any reactions in the chat. We would love to hear from you and not have to be this one-way webinar style kind of thing, but ideally as interactive as possible. We can practice that right now. Please drop in the chat where you are joining us from today.
So if you go to, there's like two areas. There's the event and the session on the right-hand side up there. If you go to session, there's the chat there. Perfect. Looks like people found it.
Yes, cool. We have London in the house, Brooklyn, Stockholm, LA, Florida, Connecticut, more New York. Ooh, different cities in New York. Very cool. Greece. I love it. Cool. Quite some global spread here. Welcome, everyone. All right. So what is Catalyze? For those of you who are new to us, actually in the chat, I'd love to see who's a return visitor and who is new. For those of you who are new, Hope is new. Cool. Returning. Awesome. And some newbies. Looks like a great mix. So what is Catalyze? Catalyze is our virtual format for women in climate members from around the world to come together, hear about the climate work other members of our community are doing, and to do some networking. And speaking of networking, in case you're wondering who's in the pop-in room with you today, we will shortly drop a link in the chat to a Google Sheet where you can add your information. So it's easy for you to reach out, continue the conversation, and stay in touch beyond our session today. And most people you'll probably also be able to find on the Women in Climate Slack. So do reach out to people if you want to stay in touch beyond this session. And also at this point, a quick shout out to our volunteer, Sarah, for helping us project manage Catalyze and helping make this happen. Thank you so much, Sarah. And as I already mentioned, this is only our third time doing Catalyze, so we would really appreciate your feedback on what we can do better next time, what you would like to see, what you're expecting from a format like this. We have prepared a brief survey. We'll be sharing the link in the chat shortly. It would be great if you could open it up in a separate tab right now, so you'll have it ready to submit later on in the session. All right, moving on. What is Women and Climate? Women in Climate is a nonprofit that aims to create a joyful and safe space for you all to learn and talk about climate. This is an inclusive and welcoming space. You don't have to be in climate to be a member. We actually have many members who are not working in climate, but are interested in learning more, maybe look into transitioning into the climate space one day, or are interested in volunteering or starting a side project in climate. There's really many different ways that you can tackle climate work in your life. And that's pretty much my story, actually. So I met Michelle through my former job at WeWork, where I was in charge of building community for founders. And once I met Michelle, I decided I wanted to help build and grow the Women in Climate community. And now over to Michelle. Please share a little bit about your background and about the beginnings of Women in Climate and everything that has happened since you hosted our very first dinner in New York back in February of last year, almost 1 year ago.
Yes. Well, so great to see almost 30 people on our Catalyze today and to see new and returning members. I started Women in Climate back in February, very informal dinner, and now we are a fully incorporated nonprofit based in New York. We've hosted, I would say, almost 20 events, whether it's in-person dinners and virtual events like Catalyze. And it's really our members that kind of drive us to do this work, to include more people in the climate conversation. If you have friends who you think might be interested in learning more about climate but haven't started yet, please introduce this group to them. Everything is free, from our Slack group to most of our events. I wanted to just quickly highlight some of the things that we have going on. So tomorrow we are doing a city lead orientation. If you are interested in bringing a Women in Climate dinner or event to your city, and you kind of want to learn the ins and outs of how we do things, feel free to attend this webinar. It's tomorrow. You can find it on our website. And Emily Walter, our city lead extraordinaire, she's already organized 3 events in Berlin, so huge shout out to her. I'd also like to put bold on everyone's radar. We are having a pretty bold International Women's Day activation that is global and virtual, and we basically will have really amazing speakers on the topic of population, degrowth, and women in leadership. So please mark your calendars. You can also find the link to this on our website. And I am currently looking for a couple people to help out in different areas of Bold. So if you have some bandwidth, if you feel strongly about this event, please reach out to me on Slack. And last but not least, we love coffee. If you are in a position to support us, $5 a month to buy the team some coffee for all the work that we do, we would be really grateful. If you want to make a one-time donation, that is available as well. And if your company has any corporate matching, we are on Benevity, so you can look us up there. So I'm going to pass it back to Stephanie now.
Cool. Let's take a look at the agenda next. So we are in the middle of the welcome. We're about to wrap up. Next, we'll hear from our sponsor. Thanks a ton. And then we'll have our 2 speakers, Melissa and MC. And after that, we'll have some time for networking, so you get to know other members of the Women in Climate community. And then Michelle will wrap us up. All right, moving on. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Thanks a Ton, for supporting the 3rd edition of Catalyze. Really grateful for you to make this possible. And actually, Michelle, do we have anyone here from Thanks a Ton who would like to say a few words? I'm not sure.
I know Laura is in the audience. Laura, if you can share your video, let's see if we can get you on. If we figure this out, maybe somewhere along the road, we can also come back to this. So maybe we can jump into Melissa's presentation first, and then when Laura is able to come on, we'll get her back.
Cool, let's do that. All right, welcome, Melissa. You're up. Very excited to hear about your work. I think for me, first, when I heard about your work, I was like, what does jewelry have to do with climate? So I'd love to learn more about your work. The stage is yours.
Well, first, thank you for inviting me to be a part of January's Catalyze and the climate conversation. Stephanie, can you proceed to the next slide? Thank you. I'm Melissa Dusenberry, founder of All the Brilliance, an e-commerce platform of thoughtfully designed jewelry made by women. And to sort of address what Stephanie said, last summer, I had the opportunity to attend the Women in Climate event, and I was blown away by all of the panelists. But I had a big realization, and that was that the climate conversation parallels the responsibly sourced jewelry conversation. So permit me to give a quick background on the spark behind All the Brilliance. My career started as an art director in advertising, and that evolved into being a creative director for entrepreneurial ventures, helping them find their vision and their voice. 10 years ago, I worked for a private high jewelry club with social impact for high net worth women in London. And as a lot of you may be entrepreneurs, you all know we wear a lot of hats beyond what our superpower is. So one of mine was business development with established jewelry houses. So during the early days of social media, and remember, this is 10 years ago, brands were not exactly inclusive or eager to embrace social media. And the jewelry industry was notoriously opaque. So understanding the value of gemstones was very intimidating. The most wonderfully compelling thing that I came to learn about jewelry is that as one of the world's first art forms, much of what we know about our ancient ancestors comes to us through archaeology and jewelry. And we learn how jewelry was always a reflection of what was of meaning and of value to them. With All the Brilliance, my aim is to restore that connection, helping people find discerning jewelry that is uniquely beautiful to them and aligns with their values. Gemstone education and responsible sourcing are part of All the Brilliance DNA in a way that is inclusive, accessible, and engaging. I host and co-host themed sparkling tastings so that people can personally experience gemstones, learn what responsible sourcing means, and why gemstones are special and valuable. The colored gemstones you see here in my hand are garnet, sapphires, and tourmalines, and they all have a traceable provenance from Africa. And then on the far right, you see the designer Deborah Navarro with Esther, one of the artisanal miners in East Africa, whom she directly sources her gemstones from. The women whose jewelry you see on All the Brilliance, they all practice responsible sourcing in different ways and in different degrees, which support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Stephanie, can you progress to the next slide? Many of you may recognize Michelle's clever carbon stamps to represent the SDGs. I'd like to share with you 4 ways responsibly sourced jewelry supports these SDGs. So the first SDG you see is number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And the colored gemstones you see in my hand there are from artisanal miners. Artisanal miners are often farmers in remote areas with limited natural resources. These families mine part-time using simple tools, including their hands, shovels, picks, and sometimes compressors. Think of artisanal miners as entrepreneurs, some of which are women. Next is SDG number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. Now, what you see there is an antique diamond that is a post-consumer recycled diamond. Choosing post-consumer recycled diamonds, whether they are 4 or 400 years old, is a beautiful way to reimagine an asset that has already incurred a cost in its carbon footprint. Jewelry has always been circular. Next is SDG number 14, and I'm also going to throw in 15. So 14 is life below water and life on land. And what you see in this person's hand is Fairmined Gold. Fairmined is actually an assurance label certifying that gold is from empowered, responsible artisanal mining organizations. This means mercury-free gold with clarity about the traceable origins and mining conditions, ensuring environmental protection, especially water, as well as sustainable economic and social development. Fairmined Gold is from Colombia, Peru, and currently in audit is Mongolia. Finally, you see SDG number 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. What you're looking at are traceable, ethical, raw, natural diamonds from Botswana. Botswana is a vision of socioeconomic empowerment. It is a balance where a business operates in partnership with a government and civil society. Investments are made in communities and benefits are shared. Diamonds from Botswana and Argyle diamonds from Australia are diamonds you can truly feel good about wearing. Stephanie, can you progress to the next slide? Why this is important? Well, as I mentioned, jewelry can be a reflection of you, your style, and your values, and empower climate action. The words sustainable, eco, and ethical are often too loosely thrown around across all categories, but it certainly is for jewelry. Responsibly sourced is a more meaningful goal because it encompasses conflict-free traceability, protecting people, their skills, and the environment, be it land or sea. Remote mining communities are empowered to not only survive, but sustainably thrive. Can you progress to the next slide, please, Stephanie? This is great. And if I could wave a magic wand, it would be all about the transparent provenance of any jewelry ingredient if it is a gemstone or a precious metal, no matter what size the gem is or what the weight of the precious metal is. So that means things like knowing who mined them, ideally women. We want to support women as much as possible, of course. The where. We naturally want to avoid conflict areas such as Russia. We don't want to be supporting the Russian government. Chain of custody. This is a really important one. Ideally, it would be having a full possession of this material if it's, well, from mine to market. But in some cases, that's not altogether possible because some countries don't have access to, for example, faceting gemstones. So sometimes gemstones are sent to major cutting areas in India, or Bangkok is another one. So sometimes these parcels are mixed, so the origins are not ring fenced. And so an ideal would be, and a lot of organizations are working on this, to ensure that this material is separate so that there's a full traceability along the supply chain. But a lot of the designers that I work with, and I work with a lot of gem dealers who do have full possession and chain of custody. Finally, the how. And this is a really important one too, and this touches on the chain of custody piece. Localized vertical integration enables remote mining communities to create more equitable, sustainable revenue streams, and even outside of mining, with access to education and training while preserving the natural environment. Can you progress to the next slide, please? Oh, okay, there we go. Finally, I would love to invite you to join our brilliant community. You can subscribe to the email newsletter for access to memorable private experiences, education, coveted jewelry that aligns with your values. I also invite you to discover on the blog some of a little bit greater detail, 4 ways responsibly sourced jewelry supports the UN SDGs. And you will also see a curated selection of jewelry that specifically addresses those particular points. I also invite you to consider in investing fewer, better pieces. So that means pieces that will endure versus something that maybe is just a trend that might end up in a landfill. And finally, rediscover what you already have. Through January 31st, I'm offering virtual jewelry edits to help you reconnect or rediscover the treasures that you already have in your jewelry box. Style is sustainable after all. Thank you so very much.
So cool. Thank you, Melissa. I think it's really interesting to hear about that connection. And it's something I think a lot of people don't really think about, how even something like jewelry plays a big role when it comes to like climate and sustainability. All right, we have some time for audience questions. There's a first question here. Where does manufacturing typically happen for your brand? And then also conventionally.
Well, I don't actually do the manufacturing. So specific to gemstones, when they are, so when we say mine to market, there are organizations, sometimes, mining companies that literally work on the ground with artisanal miners. There are a number of programs that are specific to women, helping women sort of support themselves, because as you can imagine, a lot of the miners traditionally have been men, but now women are starting to not only own mines but run them. And Botswana is a great example of that as well. How specifically when you talk about mining and cutting and bringing a diamond to market, Botswana, I think their diamonds were discovered in the late 60s. And so the government essentially set up a structure whereby not only are the children educated, they're supported from K to university, even attending universities all around the world. But what comes with that is, you know, a lot of these children who've benefited from, you know, this high-level university education return as doctors, or maybe they work, you know, within the Botswana diamond mining organization. They're sitting on boards, they're driving these gigantic trucks. So there are examples where the mining industry has full chain of custody of this material. So as I said, Botswana is a really great example for diamonds. There's a diamond mine that is now closed in Australia, Argyle Pink Diamonds. They have not just pink diamonds, but there are all other colors as well. Those are two good examples of how specific to diamonds, there's a full chain of custody. So these are diamonds you can feel very, very good about. And then with colored gemstones, there are a lot of organizations that support artisanal miners. Particularly, the ones I know most about are the ones in Africa. And you know, you actually can see literally some of the women, like individual women who literally mine the gemstone. And a lot of the designers that I know and work with specifically use and source these gemstones for their jewelry. I hope that answers your question.
I think it probably is. Yes, Natalie says yes. Thank you. All right, Natalie, thank you so much for the question. And I think, Michelle, we're a little short on time, right? So I know there's, I think, a few other questions from Melissa here, but we'll share contact information. And you also find Melissa on our Slack channel for any and all questions that are not answered yet. A lot of questions are always a great sign. So thank you so much, Melissa. Moving on to our sponsor, Laura. Great to see you here. And thank you again for supporting Women in Climate Catalyze. We'd love to learn more about Thanks a Ton.
Well, great. Thank you so much. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds
okay.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So you can please advance a slide. And so I'm really happy to be back to Women in Climate. Last month, I had the opportunity to meet some of you in our presentation, and now to be back as a sponsor is really exciting for us. So Thanks a Ton is a soft tech climate company, and our contribution to help save the climate is educating people about carbon dioxide removal, or CDR, what it is and why it's important. And our delivery method for our educational content is a sale of greeting cards that sponsor nascent technologies that are building the new carbon removal technologies. And carbon removal carbon is removed by the ton, metric ton, and some companies are able to sell by the kilogram, and we are one of those. So by selling by the kilogram, then we can break these expensive nascent technologies down into smaller parts that people can afford. So we launched in October 22 as a B2C company, and we are in the process of expanding our website and making a pivot to a B2B2C website. So my co-founder, Siobhan, and I are here. As you can see, we try not to take ourselves too seriously, but we take climate very seriously. If you could advance the next slide. So our education campaign is based on a few pillars where we're trying to make the information about CDR really accessible to people. So why do we need this? Well, there are three things we have to do to combat climate change. We have to reduce our emissions all the way to zero. We have to adapt to live in our changing climate, and we have to remove CO2 from our atmosphere and oceans. And what is that? It's literally the process of removing more CO2 from the atmosphere and oceans than Mother Nature can accomplish on her own. And why do we need this? We had about 290 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere at the start of the Industrial Revolution, about 170 years ago. Scientists think 350 parts per million is safe, and we're at 420 parts per million and still emitting. So usually when we talk to people who aren't very knowledgeable about climate and we explain it this way, we get this response of, oh, and now they're interested in having a conversation. So we invite you all to share these messages with people if it helps us to combat climate change. And so thank you. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was awesome, and really happy to see a Women in Climate member, present last week and come back and sponsor this week, and that means a lot to us. And you're doing some great work, so thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
And now we're going to pass it on to Celine to share the work that she's doing with SeaLegacy. Marie.
Hey, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Marie-Céline, and you would have guessed that my accent is French. And it's easier for everyone, so let's do this. I'm a consultant in communication, consulting, communities, networking, like how do you gather people around the team? And first, I kind of started with the usual way in France. I did a preparatory school. I went to business school, and I wanted to work in luxury and fashion. I think the background is important because I know some of you are not already in climate but are considering it. So there is always a way to go where you want to work to and to do sense to what you're doing. I first started in my country. I arrived at LVMH, which is maybe the biggest group on earth. And I realized really quickly it was not for me. I was lacking sense, So I would say my first crisis was like at 24. And I was like, okay, what do I love in life? And I was like, sports. I was already part of some running teams with Adidas. So I was like, okay, let's apply to this. And then followed 3.5 years of amazing jobs at the Global HQ. I traveled the world. I was in charge of like the running communities, Adidas runners. You have one in New York, by the way. But then I also realized like I'm not really helping. I was helping people through sports, but Adidas stays a big company with, in the end, on the environment, a negative impact. So I resigned. I love India. So I went back to India for like the 3rd time, became a yoga teacher. And I was like, okay, what do I want to do? I want to use my expertise. So comms, impact media, production, communities for something impactful. And I could have saved crickets in Peru. I could have worked in plastic in Indonesia. Like I was really open to anything. But it's true that I was really connected to the ocean already through surfing and diving. Steph, if you can go to the next slide, please. And so I actually ended up in ocean conservation, and it's really ending up because a friend of mine told me, hey, MC, we need someone at Coral Gardeners. It's listed on the last bullet. So it's an NGO working in coral conservation. And I was like, yeah, okay, if destiny brings me this, let's go. And so I discovered the world of ocean conservation. And I have to say, every single day, I'm learning something and I'm feeling useful. So since now a bit more than like for the past 3 years now, I've been still in ocean conservation. And I worked with different NGOs like Coral Gardeners, Penja Seed. They do hearts, how to use the power of hearts for ocean conservation. Rise Up is a network of different NGOs. In Expedition, they do like talks and conferences about meaningful projects, and SeaLegacy. So I would say my work is between working for different NGOs and nonprofits in my field of expertise. And I also help individuals on a volunteering level, thanks to my expertise and my network. And I'm going to now focus on who I work with now, almost full-time. Steph, you can go to the next slide, please. So SeaLegacy It was founded by Christina Mittermeier. I truly believe she's the best ocean, like woman in ocean conservation in photography. I really invite you to have a look. I'll drop all the links in the chat after I'm done talking. So it was founded by Christina, Paul Niken, one of the best videographer in the history of marine conservation, and Andy Mann. They are all passionate. They are from marine conservation. And we define ourselves as the global marketing, education, and communication agency for the ocean. I see Steph dropped in the chat the link to the video. I invite you to watch it after. I think it summarized really well how we use the power of beautiful imagery to raise awareness about the ocean. Because what's we see more and more is that you have amazing projects all around the world, but then or they don't have the funds or they don't know how to communicate. And when you bring the expertise of comms, production, media to meaningful projects, you can really change the game, because then it will raise like foundations will be like, oh, wow, this is really having an impact. Big donors will want to give some more money. So how do you use the power of content to raise awareness about the ocean? And we have 3 priorities area, which is Blue Natural Capital, 30 by 30, which is the goal to protect 30% of the ocean in 2030. And we also take part in ocean policy summits. Steph, if you want to change. So why this is important, just because the ocean is too important. Like I invite you to read the facts I dropped here. It was really difficult to select facts because it's like mind-blowing how the ocean is important. It's the air we breathe. It's where the wildlife is. Like we need the ocean, but we are right now literally destroying it through fisheries, plastic, the way we do not respect marine species. So this definitely has to stop. And with SeaLegacy, we hope that through the power of media and comms, we can put pressure on the politics during ocean summits. Put pressure on the people who are making the decisions. We also give a voice to local projects, as I told you, like how can you elevate the work that's already done? And something that's really important, because when you work in ocean conservation or in climate, I think you need to keep hope, because if you stop trying, it's done. Like it's over, like it's in extinction. So we really want to give hope through beautiful content, which help us to raise awareness, and then we hope people will take action. Steph, you can change this. So if I had a magic wand, equality between all genders, not a surprise. It's also in ocean conservation. It's everywhere. So we're trying also to elevate women, especially like in the local projects. I would love for all the political agenda to have climate change and ocean conservation action. Sometimes it's like, seriously, like they are like, we're going to do this and this and this, but they never mention the impact we have. I invite everyone to have as much as possible a vegan diet. This does have a great impact on climate and on ocean conservation. I would prohibit anything with like amusement parks with animals, like all of this, like all the massacres you can see. Same for leather, plastic, fast fashion. And definitely, this is on my personal notes, I would love a carbon neutral way to fly. Steph, you can change. And the last thing, I already said it, but I could have actually helped any kind of NGO. So if you are interested in climate, if you have a specific expertise, everyone can help. Like if you're in accounting, HR, marketing, comms, like NGOs, climate, ocean conservation do need every type of expertise. This is a fun fact. I'm actually considering maybe creating an activist group to create like for ocean summits to be vegan, because it's not a joke. During ocean summits, people will serve you octopus, tuna, and it just breaks my heart. So if you're in this field, reach out. And then I just dropped like different handles. You have my personal one. I do travel a lot. I help different organizations. And then you have the Instagram of SeaLegacy. We also have a donation program, which is called The Tide. If you want to help with a monthly donation, it can be $1, it can be 1,000, go for it. And last but not least, please spread the word. Just what you see on Instagram, the fact you just read on that presentation, everything is important. Like everyone you talk to, maybe they're going to change one little thing in one day, 1 month, 1 year, but we need everyone to make an effort so we can protect the earth and the ocean. That's it.
Wow, that was beautiful, Marie. Thank you so much. You got through so much in the 10 minutes, and I think we're all inspired to learn more about the work and to really think more about the oceans, which is 70% of our planet. I had the pleasure of working with Christina, and she said that if a Martian flew by Earth, it would think that everything lived in the oceans. Yeah, let that sit a moment. But we have a question for you. We've got 5 minutes for questions. And Cody's question is, what has been the most awe-inspiring moment you've experienced in your work with SeaLegacy?
I don't know. Yeah, I think one moment, like in the past, let's say 3 months, because we have so many up and downs, like, it's very emotional. You fight for something, it happens, it does not, and so on. I would say it was during CITES in Panama. It's like a conference about the protection of species, and Panama presented like an appendice. It's not even a law, it's just a section of a law that we wanted to change. So we wanted requiem sharks, which are a specific kind of sharks, to be protected under the environmental laws and not the fisheries laws. So it's just to change the subtext of the law, so sharks would have way better protection. And we created a campaign, we created videos, we involved big ambassadors, superstars, local communities, politicians. We really fought for it. We're like, we catalyze the work people do. Like, we're not the scientists and so on. Like, we really helped everyone. And I have to say, I didn't think it would work. And then you have this moment, it's live, you have the director of the assembly who asks for the votes of all the governments. And then you realize it goes through. And I cried. I was like, what? Like, seriously, it did work? And now, I mean, let's see how it's implemented, but we need to have hope, because sometimes what we do reaches the politics and then it changes. And this moment really gave me goosebumps when we saw that actually governments voted for this. So yeah, this was an amazing moment.
That's a wonderful moment, Marie. And I think the work that you do is so important, because you're giving a voice to those that really can't speak for themselves. They're not on the land. We don't see them often. You can hear birds chirp. You can see squirrels run around. You can, go see animals elsewhere. You can go to the safari. Not that I'm encouraging that, but that's where you can see wildlife. But like with the oceans, you can't hear the octopus and the corals and everything else. So that is such a beautiful moment for the sharks. Thank you. Looks like you're getting some shout outs there, Marie. We've got, 3 minutes. Any other questions you might have for Marie? Marie, maybe what's one thing or one project that you're working on now that you're super excited about, and maybe we can help raise the volume on?
Sure. I would say at the moment we're focusing on 2 main campaigns. The first one is in Baja California. We're working with a lot of local communities, including fishermen, on how to declare new marine protected areas. And if I really summarize it, it's collaborate with fishermen. So we all protect those areas. And how do you integrate tourism? Like, how do you create new ways of creating money, so they don't have to go with shark fishing and so on. So I would say Mexico and Baja California with marine protected areas is going to be big for us. and also Antarctica. There is an entity called CCALRM, CCALRM. It's had been created for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years and nothing is moving. They're trying, like people working on it, like big up on them and full respect. But Antarctica is so important for all the climates. We do have to work on marine protected areas there also. So I would say those two projects and all the blue carbon topic that's becoming bigger and bigger are like the key topics, at least for the beginning of the year for us.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Marie. And thanks everyone for sticking around. And now we are going to move on to our networking time. And partially why we're testing out Hopin is to see how this networking session works. So don't do anything yet, but on your left-hand side, you're going to see the reception, the sessions, and the networking. And so we're going to do 2 rounds of networking for 5 minutes each. It's actually timed, so you should automatically be able to go in, and if you hit the join section, you'll be automatically paired with someone. So we'll be there in about 10 minutes. And then after that, we'll all come back to the sessions here where we can do a little debrief and say goodbye and close the session. So if everyone can hop over to the networking section now, I